A field in southern Mali, cracked and pale, has not seen rain in over 200 days. And yet, beneath the dust, something green is growing. Rows of millet stand where nothing should survive. Farmers walk between them without irrigation pipes, without wells in sight, without a cloud in the sky. For decades, this region was written off. Maps marked it as marginal land. Aid workers called it unfarmable. Rainfall here can vanish for months at a time, and when it does fall, it often comes too fast, stripping topsoil instead of feeding it. But something changed. Somewhere between the 1980s and now, a quiet shift took place in these fields, one that outsiders almost missed entirely. No new dams were built. No large irrigation projects arrived. No foreign machinery rolled through these villages. And yet crop yields in parts of the Sahel began rising, not falling. Even as droughts grew worse, scientists who studied satellite images of the region noticed something strange. Areas that should have been turning to desert were instead turning green. The official term for what was happening did not exist yet. The answer was not hidden in a laboratory. It was standing in the fields the whole time, waist high, easy to miss, and almost cut down by mistake. The region is called the Sahel, a narrow belt of land stretching across Mali, just south of the Sahara. Here, rain is not seasonal. It is rare, unpredictable, and cruel in its timing. Farmers in villages near Kaudiala remember the years when nothing grew at all. One farmer, a man named Amadou, recalls watching his father's fields turn to dust in the mid-1980s. "We thought the land itself had died," he later told a visiting agronomist. Entire villages emptied out. Families walked south, searching for work, leaving behind fields that no longer fed them. Government officials at the time believed the land was simply finished. Some maps were redrawn, marking large areas as unsuitable for agriculture altogether. But not everyone left. A handful of farmers stayed behind. And what they started doing in their fields would have looked, to any outsider, like a mistake. They stopped clearing the land completely. Small shrubs and tree stumps, the kind most farmers cut down without thinking, were left standing between the crop rows. Neighboring farmers thought they were lazy. Some mocked them for not properly preparing their fields. But Amadou kept the stumps in his land anyway. He said his father once told him something odd. Something about the roots beneath those stumps holding more than just soil. At the time, it sounded like superstition. Years later, researchers studying the region would return to that exact same explanation. And what they found underground would change how the world understood farming in dry land forever. But first, they needed to explain something stranger. Why did some fields recover while identical land just a few kilometers away kept turning to desert? By the late 1990s, researchers from a regional agricultural institute began visiting villages across the Sahel, trying to understand the pattern. What they found did not make sense at first. Fields with more trees seemed to hold more moisture. Fields stripped bare, the ones farmers considered clean and well managed, dried out faster. It went against everything modern farming had taught. One soil scientist, a man named Moussa Traore, described his first visit to Amadou's land as unsettling. "I expected dust," he said. "Instead, I found shade. I found insects. I found soil that was still alive. He knelt down and pushed his hand into the ground. It was cooler than the soil just a few meters away in a field with no trees at all. Something beneath the surface was clearly different, but no one could say exactly what. Local farmers had their own explanation, one that outsiders were reluctant to take seriously. They spoke of roots that never truly died, stumps that looked lifeless above ground, but were still very much alive underground. Tror was skeptical. Dead-looking wood, he assumed, meant dead wood. But when his team began digging near one stump, something stopped them completely. Roots, thick, spreading, and still growing, extending far wider than anyone expected. The stump had been cut decades earlier, and yet, underground, it had never stopped fighting to survive. Tror later admitted the discovery left him uneasy. If this was happening under one field, how many other stumps across the Sahel were doing the exact same thing unnoticed for years? And if farmers had been unknowingly destroying the very thing that could save their land, how much damage had already been done? Word of the discovery spread quickly among researchers working across the region. Soon, teams were traveling from Burkina Faso and Niger, comparing notes, chasing the same strange pattern. What they found was bigger than anyone expected. This was not one field. It was not one village. Across thousands of hectares of the Sahel, the same hidden root systems were sitting beneath the soil, buried under what looked like empty, ruined land. A forestry expert named Ibrahim Sawadogo, who had spent years studying failed reforestation projects, called it the biggest blind spot he had encountered in his career. "We were planting trees in places that already had trees," he said. "We just couldn't see them." For decades, expensive tree planting programs had failed across the region. Seedlings died within months, unable to survive the heat and the dry winds. Meanwhile, the answer had been underground the entire time, ignored, cut back, and mistaken for dead wood. But one new question was starting to unsettle the researchers more than any other. If these root systems could survive years, even decades, buried and forgotten, why had nobody documented this before? Sawadogo began pulling old agricultural records, colonial-era land surveys, anything that might explain the gap. What he found buried in the archives stopped him cold. A short mention, easy to miss, written by a French colonial officer nearly a century earlier. A brief note describing local farmers deliberately leaving certain stumps untouched, calling the practice unnecessary and recommending it be phased out. The very method that could have prevented widespread desertification had been dismissed on paper generations before anyone thought to test it. And somewhere in that decision, an entire ecosystem had nearly been erased before it was ever understood. Sawadogo needed to understand exactly what was happening beneath the soil, so his team began excavating one stump completely, root by root, down to nearly 2 meters deep. What they uncovered was not just survival. It was a system. The roots spread wide and deep, reaching water tables far below what any seedling could access. Around those roots, the soil itself had changed. It was darker, looser, filled with tiny channels left behind by decades of root growth. Those channels, Tror realized, were acting like natural pipes, letting rare rainfall sink deep into the ground instead of running off the surface and disappearing. Above ground, the stumps did something else entirely. Their branches, when allowed to regrow, broke the force of the wind. They dropped leaves that decomposed into the soil. They cast just enough shade to slow evaporation. It was not one solution. It was three systems working together, all coming from something farmers had been taught to remove. Amadou listened to the explanation quietly when researchers finally visited his field to tell him what they had found. He did not seem surprised. "My father knew this," he said. "He just didn't have your instruments to prove it." The technique now had a name. Researchers called it farmer-managed natural regeneration, but the name felt almost too small for what it represented. This was not a new invention. It was old knowledge, nearly erased, rediscovered just in time. And now, one urgent question remained. Could this method be taught fast enough and widely enough before the next drought erased everything all over again? The answer had been found, but spreading it was not simple. Aid organizations had spent decades promoting tree planting as the solution, admitting that farmers had already solved the problem quietly without funding or recognition. Was not an easy message to deliver. Still, the results were becoming impossible to ignore. In parts of Niger, satellite images showed millions of hectares transformed using this same method. Trees that outsiders once believed did not exist were now visible from space. Amadou's own yields had tripled since his father first left those stumps standing. Word spread village to village, farmer to farmer, long before any government program caught up. But the story carried a harder truth underneath it. For every farmer who protected his stumps, others had already cleared theirs completely, chasing short-term yields, following advice that seemed modern and efficient at the time. Some of that land could not be brought back, not quickly, not without help the region often could not afford. Sawadogo still visits fields across the Sahel, documenting where the technique survives and where it came too late. He says the lesson haunts him more than any drought ever did. "We nearly destroyed the answer while searching for one," he said. Today, millions of hectares across West Africa have been restored using knowledge that once existed only in memory, passed from father to son, dismissed by outsiders, and nearly lost to time. The land did not need to be saved by something new. It needed people to stop erasing what already worked. If you want to see more real stories of nature quietly fighting back, subscribe and stay for what we uncover next.